Welcome back, everybody. Derek Sue, your East Oakland advocate. Well, I want to kind of talk about the A's product when I started attending Oakland A's games when they first came uh, to Oakland from Kansas City. When they came from Kansas City, they were Charles O. Finley. Charles O. Finley, actually Charles Finley. He owned the Oakland A's, Kansas City A's at that time, and he was a disgruntled uh, team owner, and he wanted a new stadium, and Kansas City could not accommodate his wishes in any way, shape, or form. And so, what ended up happening, he announced that he would move the Oakland, or not Oakland, but the then Kansas City A's to the city of Oakland, to the newest stadium that was created in the nation at the time, and that was the Oakland Alameda County Coliseum. And so in 1967, they left Kansas City and came to Oakland and started in the 1968 baseball season for Major League Baseball and became known as the Oakland A's. And it was an exciting time for a lot of us in Oakland. My grandfather, he was a big baseball fan for the longest time. He would go over across the bay to windy can Candlestick Park. For those of you that don't know Candlestick Park, you can Google that. It is a very, very old stadium, another multi-use type of stadium that was created in the 50s. When the Giants moved here, they were originally at Kezar Stadium while the completion of Candlestick Park was being completed, and they moved here in 1958. So, gives you an idea of the length of time and the huge costs on a stadium. And that's how San Francisco got the Giants originally. And then they were actually going to be sold a number of years ago and move out of San Francisco if it wasn't for the effort of the new successful Oracle Park across the bay. And that's where the Giants play now. And uh, I bring that up is because that entire stadium was built in the China Basin area, and on old piers. And what they did, they took out all the old piers, put in new concrete, deep pilings all the way to bedrock, and created a new space, which is now the Oracle Park across the bay. And that's what I had been suggesting for City of Oakland and Port of Oakland to do with Oakland's Middle Harbor. Middle Harbor can do exactly the same thing. We build a platform over the water like we did in China Basin and the Oracle Park, and built a new stadium there. And then people were talking about ingress and egress issues. Well, we've had the exact same bullshit in terms of traffic for all the different sites. At one time, there was um, a Brooklyn Basin idea that came across back in the 90s for a stadium in Brooklyn Basin, right here in Oakland. But then again, ingress and egress issues to the freeway. Even though it would have been literally just like the Coliseum, it would have been just minutes off of the freeway. But again, through roads, and then late night hours down there at the Port of Oakland, you know, there was a lot of issues with developing that. But if they had decided to move forward instead of Howard Terminal, I had been saying for the longest time, the city of Oakland, that is a crown jewel that needs to be polished and needs to be anchored by a big sports venue, a major shopping and entertainment venue, and it can also be a long-term solution for affordable housing. And this would be on board not only on land but also a floating community. So there's a lot of different opportunities for Oakland's Middle Harbor, and I've talked about that in depth for since 2017. But anyway, the Oakland A's, when some of my first memories coming out to the Oakland ballpark for the very first time, it was so exciting because up until that time, I had only seen baseball on TV, and uh, TV was mostly black and white back in the mid 60s. Yeah. And it's not color like today. I mean, we had honking big CRTs, cathode ray tubes, that projected a picture on a phosphorus screen, and then that's how we watched it. So we were being exposed to all sorts of radiation in front of that CRT. But anyway, color TV was a new thing, and it still hadn't been perfected. And my family, we were fortunate enough that we had a color TV. It was one in the entire house. It was in the living room for the family, and it wasn't that big. Yeah, we're only talking 24 inches diagonally, and that was one of the biggest TVs at the time, and it was heavy. I mean, this thing was a big brute, and it took two people, two big guys, to take it from the delivery truck and then bring it into the house. And once it was set in the floor, it was very, very heavy. If you ever had to move it for any reason, so uh, but color TV did not do justice to the first time experiencing of walking through the gates at the Coliseum, and then for the first time seeing the field live. It was an exciting moment for me. And then you smell the fresh cut grass, and you hear the people getting concessions and shirts and everything. And it was an exciting time. I was only 8 years old when the first season was played here in Oakland in 1968. Vita Blue was a Cy Young Award winner, and I mean it was a fun time, and there were a lot of giveaways and promotions to bring the crowds in, and the tickets weren't so unreasonable like today. Yeah, we had season tickets. My family bought season tickets, and if I remember right, our tickets were $8 for our seats, for each seat. So we paid, we bought four seats, all together, and so $32 per game was the cost back then for a family of four. And if you think about it, uh, my mother didn't make a whole lot of money back then, because she would. You got to remember, wages were very low at the time, and she was only making, in 1968, she was only making something like $1.65 an hour, and she was a, a clerk at the time for Macy's in San Francisco. So you also had the cost of the commute to San Francisco, and then the babysitter, the housekeeper that we had, and she paid the housekeeper half of what she made every week. And so by the time you look at what she had at the end of the week, that was $38. So that just covered four seats at an Oakland A's game back then in 1968. But fortunately, it was my grandfather who was a very loyal baseball fan, and in fact, he had followed the Giants for a number of years until Oakland A's came to Oakland, and then he switched allegiance back to Oakland so that he can attend the games more readily and more easily. And so, because he lived right here in the East Bay, and it was quite a chore for my grandfather to go across the bay to go watch a game at Candlestick Park, and it would typically just be him. And so having a team here in Oakland made it very easy for him, and he bought season tickets. He bought the 4 seats, and we held those seats until 1987 when an event occurred. And in 1987, that was with the Walter Haas family, and the Oakland Coliseum was host to the All-Star game, Major League All-Star baseball game that year, 1987. And so uh, all of us who had season tickets down there on the first deck, we were told we could not get our seats, and they were going to be uh, other people sitting in there. But they offered us seats elsewhere in the stadium. Unfortunately, as we found out, it was behind home plate, up on the third deck, at the highest top portion, most rail up there. I mean, it was miserable. You could hardly see the baseball being thrown from the pitcher's mound to home plate or to the batter. I mean, it was horrible. And so anyway, I did take binoculars, and I saw who was sitting in my seats, my normal seats, and that was the commissioner of baseball. So I saw some value there. I see why, but then there were other reasons why uh, we ended up stopping uh, being ticket holders suddenly, and the front office did quite a bit to try and entice my mother. At that point, she was in charge of buying the tickets, and uh, there was just no way that we were going to be bought out after the way we were treated, and we were angry about the 5,000 tickets that were returned through Major League Baseball. And rather doing the right thing, the Coliseum staff just took those tickets and put them up for general sale, because what I say, what they should have done was they go back to the season ticket holders, especially those that were affected behind the Oakland A's dugout, which was our group, because 5,000 tickets were returned, and those were the seats right in that area that were returned. And so they had all of our information. They had our contact telephone numbers for home and for work, and also credit card information. So they could have uh, easily updated everybody that in our section to so that we could be back down on the first deck, or not so much way up with feeding with the seagulls. But yeah, it was a very different time, and Charles Finley made baseball fun. We had all sorts of giveaways. Some of my favorite was Bat Day. We had my the bat that I had was really early because it was a Rick Monday. Do you remember who Rick Monday was? He ended up playing his most of his entire career with the Chicago Cubs. He was traded to the Chicago Cubs in 1969 for Ken Holtzman. And Ken Holtzman was a left-handed pitcher that Oakland desperately needed. And so they traded away Rick Monday, the center fielder, for Ken Holtzman. And I was heartbroken because I had the bat of with Rick Monday's signature, and it was a Kelly green bat. And then we had the other giveaways, the helmet day, kids batting helmet day, and you got the plastic batting helmet, all green, the white colored A on there, and then the bill was yellow color. Then you had what was that, windbreaker day? Yeah, that was a great one, as I had a mint condition windbreaker from 1968. And the early days, they had on their logo for the Oakland A's, not only was there an A, but on the very small print inside of their logo was the swinging A's. And so that was a very unique patch that was on the windbreakers. And I actually held onto that windbreaker. It was in storage up until 2012. And then 2012, I did sell it because I did advertise it as a nostalgia piece, a collector piece. And what drew everybody's attention was that patch that said the Swinging Ace. That was the original Oakland A's patch. And so that logo patch, the person thought that they could just unstitch it and use that. I said, no, that thing is glued on there, really well, and you're going to end up destroying that. But they ended up buying that jacket, that nostalgia jacket, and removed the patch. And whatever happened to that windbreaker, it's sad to know that it was most likely just destroyed. It was the original nylon yellow color, had the Kelly green and polar bear white stripe in it, and it snapped. It was a snap button type front, and then you had wristband day, and then they had lots of different fun things. You had the ball girls that came in with their hot pants, and then you had hot pants day where the ladies got 50% off coming in to the stadium. And then there were some other perks. So there were a lot of different things. You had also uh, Charlie Finley's mule, Charlie O, the mule, who was the Oakland A's original mascot, and that was a pretty cool mascot. And that was before the Haas family. The Haas family, when they took over, they didn't want to carry over the identification of the donkey. And so if you think about it, there's also a political statement being made here, because you know who the donkey is, and then you know who the elephant belongs to. And then the Haas family represented the elephant. So when they took over uh, the Oakland A's in, let's see, 1980, because Charles Finley pretty much had ravaged the Oakland A's at that time and sold off all of our talent. Jim Catfish Hunter for pitching to New York, Reggie Jackson to New York, and I mean, all the big names ended up in New York at one time. So it was kind of like Oakland A's turned and went east and were now the New York Yankees. And they dominated for a number of years with a lot of the key Oakland A's players. And then Walter Haas tried to rebuild the team, and he was very successful once he started getting some backing. And the sensation of the time was uh, Jose Canseco back in the early 80s or almost mid 80s. I remember having to deal with Jose Canseco. I was an HOA owner in Alameda at the time, and Jose and his girlfriend at the time, Esther, they leased a condominium or a townhome there in Baywood Village in Bay Farm Island, it was known as back then, but now it's known as Harbor Bay Island. So we had to speak to Jose and Esther on many occasions about uh, the way that he dressed her and her typical attire, especially in a very affluent area, and we didn't want this looking like a red light district down here. So that's all that I can say about that. But uh, I dealt with several of the Oakland A's players in the mid 80s because I was an HOA president for a townhome association starting in 1987. And in 1986, I actually moved in December of 1986, but it was midway through the month, so I don't count 1986. I start at the top of 1987, and I became in the summer, that summer of 1987. I ran for HOA president for the association because the HOA president that was there at the time, Chuck, he was a really nice guy, but he said he was really tired. He wanted to see it, a younger person carry on for representing the townhome association. And I was now one of the new owners in there, one of the smaller units. Only, what was that? We had the Snow Goose unit. So it was a 2-bed, 2-bath unit. And so I became HOA president for a year, and then I served as um, the Townhome Association pool president and co swimming pool president. And so we took care of that issue, those issues for the townhome associations. So folks ask me why I know so much about HOAs. That's why I was HOA president for a number of years in Alameda. And then when I moved to Oakland, I was also an HOA representative for the townhome, the condominium that my wife and I moved into in the Jean Terrace, or the Jean Terrace area, in the Rose Garden area, because we actually had a condominium at Jean Terrace on Jean Street. And so that's how I got my experience and knowledge on HOAs and how HOAs run. But those were fun times. We had dot racing, during the Haas. It was kind of, and those were terrible years in terms of attendance before Jose Canseco and Mark McGuire. The Bash brothers came in the just mid 80s. It was before 1986, 87, right in that area, because that's when I was just moved into there myself. and, and so Walter Haas, they did a lot. They tried, and so dot racing, was something to do. And there were some other things that they tried, and it brought people out to the crowd, even though there were times where I was part of the crowd, and there were more workers in the stands than there were people in the seats. And there was a period where I was so used to walking up and just ordering my or my drinks, my hot dogs, and all the different food, and then during the championship season, I during the playoffs, I should not playoffs, the All-Star game, when I was attending the All-Star game, I was not used to the lines, and it was a shocker for me. And to go from, the crowds were okay, back then, and the Bash brothers were just getting to be really famous at the time. And then we had Dennis Eckersley come aboard. We had oh God, there were so many great players in '86 and '87. But it's a very different product now. They're not trying to entertain us in any way. They're just saying, "Come on, give us your money, and we'll give you a really crappy product," which is what they've done. They've decimated everything, and there's no reason to come out. And then they are the losingest Major League Baseball team out there. And so why would Oakland, or even myself, why would I support a team that is giving you a horrible product. That's telling the ownership, you're not going to be around in business long. And Charles Finley, he sold the team after he died, and then Walter Haas bought it, and then Walter Haas had it for a while. Then he died in 1995, and it was sold to Steve Schott and Ken Hoffman, um, and they were a huge disappointment, and a big downturn for the A's and the entire organization, because they decimated the team, and that's where Moneyball came in. With Steve Schott, they were cheapskates about the team. They didn't care about the overall product. They were trying to save money. They were trying to, you know, they weren't trying to make a competitive team. Truly, they just happened upon it through Moneyball and statistics, but that hasn't always held up, as we've seen. In the long term, it doesn't work. In the short term, when it was new, yes, it did work, but now it doesn't work. And so I've hated Moneyball, and ever since, like I said, 1987, I haven't stepped foot inside a Coliseum. I have not supported the Oakland A's organization, teams, or anything that they do. And they've done nothing for the community where they give back to the community. If you see things that are associated with community events, those were with past Oakland A's players like Reggie Jackson, Ricky Henderson, you know, Dave Stewart. These are the people that are from the good times when we had Charles Finley and Walter Haas family, the Haas family, ownership. But now it's a completely different product. It's only about profit. If they can't give you a good product, they're giving you a really, really bad, inferior product, and they're going to be taking that to Las Vegas, where they're going to find it's going to be very difficult to rebuild a team from the ground up. It takes years to do that. It doesn't happen overnight. So those of you in Las Vegas who are looking forward to the A's coming there and playing there, yeah, it's going to be a difficult time for you folks. It's not going to be like instant success, like what when they came from Kansas City to Oakland. They had some great success very quickly. To go from 1968 in 4 years, they were a World Series champion. That's not the case these days, because we don't have loyal players anymore, and the Oakland A's don't have that loyalty in through the community even right now, because the Oakland A's and the past couple of ownerships have not been loyal to the community, and that's the most important thing. They have not been loyal to the community, and so why should the community, patronize and support uh, uh, an organization that does not value our input, our dollars, our support? So while it's sad to see the Oakland A's name go away, uh, the A's organization will move to Las Vegas in 2027, maybe earlier, because their lease is up in 2024. So we don't know what's going to happen. My preference is that we do not offer them an extension in any way, shape, or form. Uh, their support right now is waning big time, and since the announcement of the binding land purchase deal in Las Vegas, it's pretty much assured that Oakland is going to lose their last and final team. And it's really sad, because when I grew up, we also had a hockey team, the Oakland Seals, here. the Oakland A's, the Oakland Raiders, and then for a time we had Golden State Warriors. So all of our collective sporting souls have left Oakland. Thanks for joining me today. We'll be right back.